My name is Cassandra 34, and I never thought my own family would be capable of such cruelty toward my son. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday dinner at my parents' house, until my sister Ashley sprayed her expensive perfume directly into my 4-year-old son Ethan's eyes. While he screamed in pain, my mother laughed, saying, "If he's blind now, maybe he won't see, he's a burden too." Dad added, "Well, at least he smells better now." Before continuing, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. Life has a funny way of teaching you who truly deserves a place in your world. Before I tell you about the day that changed everything, I should explain a bit about myself and my family. I work as a pediatric nurse at Westview Medical Center, a job I love because it allows me to care for children and still have enough flexibility to be there for my son Ethan. He's 4 years old, bright-eyed, and curious about everything. Ethan has what his pediatrician calls sensory processing differences, as is extremely sensitive to certain sounds, textures, and especially strong smells. It's not severe enough for an autism diagnosis, but it does mean that everyday things other kids might not notice can be overwhelming for him. Loud restaurants, scratchy clothing tags, or strong perfumes can trigger meltdowns that leave him exhausted. My sister Ashley is 2 years older than me at 36. She's always been the golden child in our family. Successful marketing executive, perfectly styled at all times, and living what our mother calls the dream life in her downtown penthouse. Ashley never wanted children, which is completely fine, but she's never hidden her disdain for my choice to become a mother. Throwing away your potential, she called it when I told the family I was pregnant. Even now, she refers to Ethan as the situation rather than by his name. Our parents, Richard and Linda Wilson, built their lives around appearances. Dad made his fortune in commercial real estate development, and Mom was a former Miss Pennsylvania who never quite got over her pageant days. Their 5-bedroom colonial in the wealthy part of town is always immaculate, ready for impromptu visits from Dad's business associates or Mom's charity committee friends. They've always valued achievement status and what others think above everything else. My own life took a different path than the one my parents mapped out. I married James right after college, thinking we would build the perfect life together. When I got pregnant with Ethan, James seemed excited at first. But when Ethan was just 1 year old, I discovered James had been having an affair with a 22-year-old paralegal at his law firm. The divorce was quick but brutal. James moved to Seattle with his new girlfriend, now wife, and started a new family. He sends the minimum child support required by law and calls Ethan on birthdays and major holidays, sometimes. After the divorce, I had to downsize to a modest 2-bedroom apartment and rebuild my life from scratch. My nursing degree became my lifeline, providing stability for Ethan and me. Though we don't have the luxury my parents and sister are accustomed to, we've created a warm, loving home filled with laughter and understanding. Despite the tension, I continued the tradition of Sunday dinners at my parents' mansion. I wanted Ethan to have a relationship with his grandparents, an aunt hoping they would eventually see past their rigid expectations and appreciate him for the wonderful child he is. I believed family was family, and somehow we would find our way to acceptance. How wrong I was. Ashley had recently returned from a 2-week shopping trip in Paris, bringing expensive gifts for everyone except Ethan. Mom received a hand-painted silk scarf from some famous French designer. Dad got a rare bottle of cognac. I got a small bottle of hand cream that I later discovered was the free sample gift with purchase. Ethan received nothing, not even a small toy or candy. When I mentioned it quietly to Mom, she shrugged and said Ashley doesn't understand children. Don't make it into a thing. The comments about Ethan's behavior and my parenting had been escalating in recent months. When Ethan needed his chicken cut into precise squares, rather than random pieces, my mother sighed dramatically and said, "This is what happens when you coddle them." When he covered his ears during my father's loud business call, Ashley rolled her eyes and muttered, "Control your kid." Each Sunday, I drove home fighting back tears, while promising myself it would be the last time, only to convince myself by the following weekend that family connections were worth the emotional toll. The Sunday when everything changed seemed ordinary at first. Mom had prepared her usual elaborate meal, prime rib roasted potatoes and asparagus, with hollandaise sauce. The table was set with the fine china crystal glasses and heavy silver flatware that made meals with a 4-year-old particularly stressful. Ethan was trying his best sitting on a stack of cushions to reach the table properly carefully using his fork as I'd practiced with him at home. Ashley was late as usual. Mom kept checking her watch and reheating the sides, muttering about respect and punctuality, while simultaneously making excuses for her favorite daughter. "She's so busy with important clients," she said, though I knew from social media that Ashley had been at a spa that morning. When Ashley finally arrived halfway through the meal, she wasn't alone. She floated in with a tall, handsome man she introduced as Philippe, her new boyfriend from Paris. "He's in luxury goods distribution," she announced proudly, as if we should all be impressed. Dad immediately perked up asking about investment opportunities, while Mom fawned over Philippe's designer watch and European sophistication. The attention completely shifted from our meal to Ashley and her new romantic conquest. As they settled at the table with fresh plates of food, Ashley began dramatically recounting their meeting at a rooftop bar in Paris, emphasizing the exclusivity of the venue and how Philippe had sent champagne to her table. "And look what Philippe gave me before we left Paris," Ashley announced, pulling an ornate glass bottle from her designer handbag. "It's the newest scent from Maison Laurent, completely exclusive. They only made 300 bottles, and it costs $400. She held the bottle like it was a precious artifact, its crystal surface catching the light from the chandelier. "Let us smell it, darling," Mom encouraged, always eager to experience luxury by proxy. That's when everything began spiraling toward the moment that would forever change our family dynamic. I glanced at Ethan, knowing his sensitivity to strong scents, and quietly whispered that we might step out for a moment. But before we could move, Ashley had already sprayed a cloud of perfume that filled the dining room with an overwhelming mixture of jasmine, vanilla, and something musky. Ethan immediately covered his nose with both hands, his eyes watering from the intensity of the scent. He wasn't being rude. It was a physical reaction to something that genuinely caused him discomfort. But Ashley didn't see it that way. Her face darkened as she watched Ethan's reaction. "What's wrong with him?" she snapped, glaring at me as if I had personally orchestrated an insult to her precious perfume. "It's just a bit strong for him," I explained calmly, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's back. "He's sensitive to strong scents. It's nothing personal." Little did I know that simple explanation would trigger a chain of events that would reveal exactly who my family really was. "Nothing personal," Ashley repeated, her voice rising with indignation. "This perfume costs more than your monthly rent, Cassandra. Philippe had to pull strings with his connections at Maison Laurent just to get it." The dining room felt suddenly tense, the earlier superficial pleasantries evaporating. Philippe looked uncomfortable, but remained silent, taking a long sip of his wine. Dad cleared his throat and began talking about the stock market, his usual tactic when conversations turned uncomfortable. Mom adjusted her pearl necklace nervously. "I understand it's special," I said carefully, helping Ethan drink some water as he continued to look distressed by the lingering scent. "But Ethan has sensory processing issues. Strong smells are difficult for him. It's not a judgment on your perfume." Ashley stood up abruptly, the expensive perfume bottle clutched in her manicured hand. "You know what I think? I think you've trained him to be this way, to be difficult and spoiled and the center of attention." "Ashley," I warned, feeling my protective instincts flaring. "Not now." But Ashley was already moving around the table toward us, the crystal bottle uncapped in her hand. "Don't you want to smell nice for once, Ethan?" she asked in a falsely sweet voice that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I started to stand to place myself between them, but everything happened so quickly. Ashley leaned down toward Ethan, who was still covering his nose, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Stop being so dramatic," she said sharply. "It's just perfume. This is how normal people behave in society." And then, in a moment that plays in slow motion in my nightmares, Ashley deliberately aimed the perfume bottle directly at Ethan's face and pressed the atomizer. Once, twice, 3 times. The liquid sprayed directly into his eyes. Ethan's scream was instantaneous and heart-wrenching. He clutched at his face, tears streaming as he cried out in pain. "It burns, Mommy, it burns." I lunged forward, knocking over my water glass in my rush to reach him. "What is wrong with you?" I shouted at Ashley, who had stepped back, the perfume bottle still in her hand. "That has alcohol in it." What happened next is something I still struggle to process. As I grabbed napkins to wipe Ethan's eyes, desperate to help him, I heard laughter. Actual laughter. I looked up in disbelief to see my mother covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking with amusement. My father was chuckling, shaking his head as if witnessing a mildly amusing faux pas rather than an assault on his grandson. "If he's blind now, maybe he won't see. He's a burden too," my mother said, between giggles dabbing at her eyes, as if this was the funniest thing she'd witnessed in years. Dad raised his wine glass in a mock toast. "Well, at least he smells better now." Philippe, to his credit, wasn't laughing, but he wasn't helping either. He stared intently at his plate, apparently finding the roasted potatoes fascinating. Ashley crossed her arms defensively. "He needs to learn manners. I was just teaching him a lesson." Ethan continued crying, his little hands rubbing frantically at his eyes, which only made it worse. The chemical scent of the perfume now clung to him, mixed with the salt of his tears. My hands trembled as I tried to help him, my own vision blurred by tears of rage and disbelief. "We need to wash his eyes," I said, my voice shaking. "Now." "Oh, for heaven's sake," my mother sighed. "You're overreacting as usual. It's just perfume." I picked Ethan up, his small body trembling against mine. "It's a chemical that went into his eyes. He needs medical attention." "Medical attention?" Ashley scoffed. Always the drama queen. I carried Ethan to the kitchen sink, turning on the cold water and trying to flush his eyes as he struggled and cried. He was terrified in pain, and I couldn't seem to help him enough. I heard the dining room conversation resume, as if nothing had happened, the clink of silverware against plates, my mother's artificial laugh at something Philippe said. "We're leaving," I announced, returning to grab my purse and Ethan's jacket. He clung to me, his face buried against my shoulder, still whimpering in pain. "But we haven't had dessert," my mother protested. "I made crème brûlée." "I don't care if you made gold-plated chocolate," I snapped. "My son needs a doctor." "You always ruin these dinners with your overreactions," Ashley said, now reapplying her lipstick as if assaulting a child was just a minor interruption to her evening. Dad barely looked up from his meal. "Call us when you've calmed down, Cassie. You're being irrational." I stood in the doorway, my injured son in my arms, and looked at these people who shared my blood, but apparently not my humanity. "What's irrational is that none of you see anything wrong with what just happened." As I buckled Ethan into his car seat, his eyes red and swollen, his cheeks tracked with tears, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The unease and discomfort I'd been suppressing for years crystallized into a cold, clear certainty. These people were not safe for my child, or for me. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, though nothing about this situation was okay. "We're going to get your eyes fixed up. Everything will be all right." But as I drove toward the emergency room, the sound of my family's laughter echoing in my mind, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The emergency room at Mercy General was busy that Sunday evening. I carried Ethan through the automatic doors, his face pressed against my shoulder, small whimpers escaping with each breath. The fluorescent lights seemed to aggravate his pain, and he kept his eyes tightly shut. My son had perfume sprayed directly into his eyes. I told the triage nurse, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "It was about 20 minutes ago." The nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, immediately took us seriously. "Chemical exposure to the eyes is a priority. Come with me." She led us past the waiting area directly to an examination room where a doctor joined us within minutes. "I'm Dr. Patel." She introduced herself, speaking gently to Ethan before turning to me. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" I hesitated for just a moment. My sister deliberately sprayed perfume in his eyes. It was a high-concentration designer fragrance. Dr. Patel's expression remained professionally neutral, but I noticed her glance at the nurse who was making notes. "And how long ago did this occur?" "About 20, maybe 25 minutes now. I tried flushing his eyes with water at my parents' house before driving here." That was the right first step, she assured me, then focused on Ethan. "I'm going to look at your eyes now, buddy. It might be uncomfortable, but I need to see how they're doing." Ethan whimpered, but allowed the examination. Dr. Patel used a special light to check his eyes, her movements gentle but thorough. She then set up a more extensive eye-washing system, explaining each step to Ethan in simple terms. "Will there be permanent damage?" I asked the question that had been terrorizing me during the drive over. Most perfume exposures don't cause permanent damage, but they can cause significant chemical conjunctivitis, essentially a chemical burn on the surface of the eye, she explained. "We won't know the extent until we've thoroughly flushed his eyes and the swelling reduces." While another nurse helped with the eye flushing, Dr. Patel took me aside. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to ask you something directly, and I need an honest answer." "It's Miss Wilson, and of course." "Was this truly deliberate? Your sister intentionally sprayed perfume into your child's eyes?" The question hit me like a physical blow, forcing me to verbalize the reality I was still processing. Yes, he was covering his nose because the smell was too strong for him. She got angry, approached him, and sprayed it directly at his face. 3 sprays directly at his eyes. Dr. Patel's professional demeanor slipped just slightly, revealing a flash of concern. And what was the response of others present? I swallowed hard. My parents laughed. My mother said if he goes blind, at least he won't see that he's a burden. My father said, at least he smells better now. The doctor was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "I'm going to have our social worker stop by to speak with you. This is a mandatory reporting situation." Mandatory reporting. For potential child abuse, yes. She held up a hand when she saw my expression. "This isn't an accusation against you, but deliberate chemical exposure to a child's eyes is a serious matter." As the reality of what she was saying sank in, memories from the past year flooded back. Incidents I had minimized or excused: Ashley accidentally tripping Ethan at Christmas, causing him to fall against the coffee table. Ashley not noticing him when she opened a door, hitting him hard enough to leave a bruise. Ashley joking around when she spilled hot soup near his lap at a previous dinner. It wasn't just today. It was a pattern. After Ethan's eyes were thoroughly flushed, Dr. Patel returned with eye drops and small patches. "The good news is I don't see evidence of corneal damage. He has chemical conjunctivitis, which is painful, but should resolve without permanent effects. We'll patch his eyes for the night to let them rest, and you'll need to apply these drops every 4 hours." While Ethan rested on the examination bed, patches covering his injured eyes, a hospital social worker named Marissa came to speak with me. She was straightforward but compassionate, taking detailed notes about the incident and asking about previous concerning behaviors. "What you're describing is concerning," she said after I finished recounting everything. "This appears to be a pattern of deliberately harmful behavior toward your son, combined with concerning attitudes from your parents." I never thought of it as abuse. I admitted the word, feeling heavy and awful. "Their family. Family members can be abusive," Marissa said gently, "and minimizing harmful behavior because it comes from family is very common. But considering what happened today, I strongly recommend you limit contact with these individuals, at least until a proper assessment can be made." While we were talking, my phone had been buzzing repeatedly in my purse. Now, during a pause in the conversation, I checked it: 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and several text messages. "Mom, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Ashley spent a fortune on that perfume. You embarrassed all of us." "Dad, call us immediately. Your behavior was unacceptable." "Ashley, Philippe thinks you're insane. Way to ruin dinner. The kid was being annoying anyway." No concern for Ethan. No questions about his condition. Just anger that I had disrupted their evening and embarrassed them in front of Ashley's new boyfriend. "Are these from your family?" Marissa asked, noticing my expression. I nodded, turning the phone to show her the messages. She read them silently, her expression growing more concerned. "Miss Wilson, based on what I'm seeing, I strongly recommend you document everything that happened today and consider speaking with a family lawyer about protection options for both you and your son." After Marissa left, I sat beside Ethan, who had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from pain and crying. The hospital room was quiet, except for the occasional announcement over the intercom and the steady beeping of a machine in the hallway. I held Ethan's small hand in mine, overwhelmed by a mixture of guilt, rage, and resolve. A nurse named Tamika came in to check Ethan's vital signs, working quietly to avoid waking him. As she finished, she paused at the door. "I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation earlier," she said softly. "I just want to say, as a mother myself, you're doing the right thing. Protecting your child is always the right thing, no matter who you have to protect them from." Her words broke something open inside me, and tears I had been holding back spilled over. "I should have seen it sooner," I whispered. I kept making excuses. "We all want to believe the best of our families," Tamika said. "But now you see clearly, and that's what matters. Your son is lucky to have a mother who puts him first." As she left, I looked down at Ethan, his small face vulnerable with the white patches covering his eyes. In that moment, I made a promise to him and to myself. Never again would I expose him to people who could hurt him regardless of their relation to us. Never again would I prioritize family obligation over his safety and dignity. The path ahead would be difficult, but in that sterile hospital room watching over my injured child, I found a clarity and determination I hadn't known I possessed. We returned home from the hospital just after midnight. Ethan was groggy from the children's pain medication and emotionally exhausted. I carried him to his bedroom, carefully changed him into pajamas, and tucked him in with his favorite dinosaur plush. The white eye patches made him look so small and vulnerable against his blue pillowcase. I set my alarm for 4 hours later when he would need his next dose of eye drops. In the quiet of our apartment, the events of the day seemed even more surreal and horrifying. I collapsed onto the couch physically and emotionally drained, and noticed the voicemail indicator blinking on my phone. Against my better judgment, I decided to listen. My mother's voice came through first tight with annoyance. "Cassandra, this has gone far enough. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. Ashley was just trying to teach Ethan about proper social behavior. Call me back immediately." Next, my father. "Your mother is very upset about how you left things. Ashley's boyfriend was embarrassed, and you know how important first impressions are. Call us when you've calmed down and are ready to discuss this rationally." 3 more messages followed, each more demanding and less concerned about Ethan than the last. Not once did either of my parents ask how Ethan was doing or express any remorse about what happened to him. I was still sitting there stunned by their callousness when my phone rang again. My mother's name flashed on the screen. It was nearly 1 in the morning. I answered, my voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I asked. "Don't take that tone with me," my mother replied sharply. "I've been waiting for you to call and apologize for your behavior. Ashley is absolutely beside herself." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Apologize, Mom." Ashley deliberately sprayed chemical perfume into Ethan's eyes. He had to be treated for chemical conjunctivitis at the emergency room. The doctor reported it as potential child abuse. There was a pause then. "Child abuse? How dare you? This is exactly the kind of dramatic overreaction I'm talking about. Ashley spent nearly $400 on that perfume. She was simply trying to share something special. By spraying it directly into a 4-year-old's eyes while you and Dad laughed about it, we were trying to lighten the mood after you started making a scene," she defended. "Honestly, Cassandra, Ethan needs to learn how to behave in social situations. Ashley was just trying to help." In that moment, I recognized something I'd been denying for years. My mother would always defend Ashley regardless of how harmful her actions were. She had enabled my sister's cruelty throughout our childhood, and was continuing the pattern with Ethan. "Mom, I want you to hear me clearly," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "What Ashley did was deliberate and harmful. Your response was cruel. Ethan will not be around either of you until there is acknowledgement of what happened and a sincere apology." "You're being ridiculous," she scoffed. "What about Sunday dinner next week? Your father has important clients coming." "Did you hear anything I just said? My son was injured. He's sleeping with patches on his eyes because of chemical burns, and you're worried about dinner with clients. Don't raise your voice at me, young lady. This attitude is exactly why Ashley gets frustrated with you. You've always been too sensitive." I ended the call, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. Less than 5 minutes later, my father called. "Your mother is crying," he began without preamble. "I don't know what you said to her, but this has gone far enough. You need to apologize to Ashley and to us for creating this drama and embarrassing the family. Dad Ashley hurt Ethan. Deliberately. The emergency room doctor reported it as abuse. Don't be ridiculous. Ashley would never abuse anyone. She was just trying to teach him some manners. You've always been jealous of her, and now you're using your son to get attention. His words hit like physical blows, knocking the wind from my lungs. Is that really what you think of me? That I would use my child's pain for attention? What I think is that you've never quite fit in with this family, he said coldly. Ashley has always understood what's expected of her. You've chosen a different path, and that's your right, but don't expect us to change our standards because of it. In that moment, something crystallized for me. You're right, Dad. I don't fit in with this family. Because I would never laugh at a child being hurt. I would never value appearances over kindness. And I would certainly never dismiss my grandchild's pain as an inconvenience. You're being melodramatic, he dismissed. We expect to see you and Ethan at the family gathering next weekend. Ashley will be announcing her engagement to Philippe, and the whole family will be there. You'll both need to apologize to Ashley for ruining her special dinner. Engagement, she just met him. They've been dating long distance for months. Not that you've bothered to take an interest in your sister's life. The point is, this is an important event, and we expect you to be there. Both of you. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what needed to be said. No, Dad, we won't be there. Not next weekend, not for Christmas, not for any family gathering, until there is a genuine acknowledgement of what happened, and a sincere apology to Ethan. There was a long silence, then my father's voice turned icy. If that's your position, then you should know there will be consequences. Your mother and I have been generous with helping you financially since your divorce. That help is contingent on being part of this family, being at family gatherings, maintaining appearances. Are you threatening to cut me off if I don't bring my abused child to apologize to his abuser? Don't be so dramatic. I'm simply stating facts. Actions have consequences, Cassandra. You're a grown woman with a child. It's time you understood how the real world works. I understand perfectly, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. And I want you to understand something too. My son's safety and dignity are worth more than your money or approval. I don't want or need either if they come with these conditions. I ended the call and turned off my phone too, emotionally exhausted to deal with any more messages or calls. I checked on Ethan, relieved to find him sleeping peacefully, despite the patches on his eyes, then curled up in the armchair next to his bed, unwilling to leave him alone even for the few hours until his next medication. As I drifted in and out of a fitful sleep, my father's words echoed in my mind. Actions have consequences. He meant it as a threat, but as the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, I realized it was actually a promise. Their actions would indeed have consequences, just not the kind they were expecting. The next morning, I called into work and explained the situation to my supervisor, who immediately approved emergency family leave. Ethan woke disoriented and in pain, confused about why he couldn't see and why his eyes hurt so badly. I explained as gently as I could, carefully administering his eye drops and making his favorite breakfast of dinosaur-shaped pancakes. "When can I take these off?" he asked, his small fingers reaching toward the patches. "We'll see Dr. Patel this afternoon, and she'll tell us," I explained. "Until then, they're helping your eyes get better." "Did Aunt Ashley mean to hurt me?" he asked suddenly, his voice small. The question broke my heart. Children have an innate desire to believe the best of adults, especially family members. How do you explain deliberate cruelty to a 4-year-old? "Sometimes adults do wrong things," I said carefully. "What Ashley did was wrong and it hurt you. That's not okay no matter who does it." "Grandma and Grandpa laughed," he said, pushing his untouched pancakes around the plate. "Why did they think it was funny?" I took his small hand in mine. "They were wrong too, buddy. Sometimes people we love make bad choices." Our appointment with Dr. Patel brought good news. Ethan's eyes showed significant improvement, and she believed there would be no permanent damage. She removed the patches but prescribed continued use of the eye drops and recommended minimal screen time for the next week. "I've made a referral to Dr. Sampson," she told me quietly while a nurse was helping Ethan choose a sticker. She's an excellent child psychologist who can help Ethan process what happened. Thank you, I said, grateful for her thoroughness. And what about the report? Child Protective Services has been notified, she confirmed. Given that you're taking appropriate protective action and seeking proper care, their focus will likely be on the individuals who caused harm. That afternoon, I made 3 important calls. The first was to Ethan's pediatrician doctor, Rivera, who fit us in for an appointment the following day to follow up on his eye treatment and discuss the emotional impact of what had happened. The second call was to a therapist named Dr. Lauren Bennett, who specialized in family trauma. I scheduled an appointment for myself, recognizing that I needed professional support to navigate the complex emotions and challenges ahead. The third call was to a family law attorney recommended by Dr. Patel. The receptionist, hearing the broad outlines of the situation, scheduled an urgent consultation for the following week. That evening, Jessica, a fellow nurse from work, came by with dinner for us and small gifts for Ethan. While he played with the new puzzles she'd brought, Jessica and I talked quietly in the kitchen. "I can't believe your own family would do this," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "How's he doing, really?" "Physically, he's improving. Emotionally, I glanced toward the living room where Ethan was carefully placing puzzle pieces. He's confused. He keeps asking why Aunt Ashley wanted to hurt him. Why his grandparents thought it was funny. What are you going to do about your family?" "Keep my distance. Set firm boundaries. I've already told my parents we won't be at any family gatherings until there's acknowledgement and a sincere apology, which I doubt will ever come." Jessica hesitated, then said, "My brother Daniel is an attorney who specializes in child advocacy. He might have some insights about protective measures you could take. Would you be open to talking with him?" I nodded gratefully. At this point, I need all the support and guidance I can get. Over the next 2 weeks, a transformation began, both in our daily lives and in my own understanding of what family truly means. Dr. Sampson, Ethan's new child psychologist, helped him process his feelings through play therapy and age-appropriate conversations. "He's resilient," she assured me after their 3rd session, "but he needs consistency now. Clear boundaries and reassurance that you'll keep him safe." My own sessions with Dr. Bennett proved equally valuable. She helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation that had defined my family relationships for years. "What you're describing is a classic golden child, scapegoat dynamic," she explained. "Ashley was elevated as perfect, while you were assigned the role of family problem. Now, those roles are extending to the next generation, with your son being cast as defective or difficult." Daniel, Jessica's brother, provided practical legal advice during a coffee meeting arranged by his sister. "Based on what you've described, you have grounds for a restraining order against your sister if necessary," he explained. "I also recommend documenting everything: previous incidents, the current situation, any communication from family members that demonstrates their attitude." I began keeping a detailed journal recording, not just the Perfume incident, but every concerning interaction I could remember. Patterns emerged that I had previously dismissed Ashley's accidents that only seemed to affect Ethan, my parents' consistent minimization of his needs, the subtle and not-so-subtle put-downs about my parenting. Jessica introduced me to a single-parent support group that met weekly at a community center near my apartment. There, I found people who understood the challenges of raising children alone, many of whom had also needed to create boundaries with difficult family members. "Blood doesn't define family," said Monica, a single mother of twins who had cut ties with her abusive parents 3 years earlier. "Family is defined by love, respect, and safety. You're doing the right thing by protecting your son." With our Sunday dinners at my parents' house no longer on the calendar, I began creating new traditions for Ethan and me. We started Adventure Sundays, exploring parks, museums, and children's activities around the city. Without the stress of trying to make Ethan conform to my parents' rigid expectations, these outings became genuinely enjoyable for both of us. Ethan's eyes healed completely, just as Dr. Patel had predicted. As the physical traces of the incident faded, I noticed positive changes in his behavior too. He seemed more relaxed, less anxious about being good according to arbitrary standards. Without the constant criticism from my family, both of us began to breathe more freely. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my cousin Megan, my father's sister's daughter, whom I hadn't spoken with in over a year. "I heard what happened with Ashley and Ethan," she said after we exchanged brief greetings. "I wanted to check on you both." "We're doing okay," I replied cautiously, unsure of her motives. "How did you hear about it?" "Ashley's been telling everyone you're mentally unstable and making up stories about her," Megan said bluntly. "But I don't believe her. My mom always said Ashley was Ruth's little mirror image, and Aunt Ruth was never kind to children." Ruth was my grandmother, my father's mother, a woman known for her cutting remarks and rigid standards. I had never made the connection before, but the parallel was striking. "The thing is," Megan continued, "you're not the first person Ashley has hurt. Do you remember my brother's wedding 5 years ago? Ashley deliberately spilled red wine on my daughter's flower girl dress right before the ceremony because Lily was getting too much attention. When I confronted her, everyone said I was overreacting. Sound familiar?" By the end of our conversation, Megan had shared 3 other incidents involving Ashley's deliberate cruelty, all of which had been minimized or excused by the family. I wasn't alone. There was a pattern reaching back years, affecting multiple family members. "I should have spoken up sooner," Megan said regretfully. "Maybe if more of us had, things wouldn't have escalated to this point." That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, I sat at my kitchen table with the journal where I'd been documenting incidents. I added Megan's accounts, noting dates and details as accurately as possible. The pattern was undeniable. Ashley's behavior had been escalating over years, enabled by my parents' willful blindness and active protection. For the first time, I saw clearly how the family dynamic wasn't just unpleasant or difficult, it was toxic and potentially dangerous. My decision to distance Ethan from them wasn't an overreaction. It was a necessary protection. And perhaps most importantly, I wasn't alone in recognizing the problem. Others had seen it too, even if they hadn't been able to name it or confront it effectively. With this new clarity came a sense of purpose and determination. The path ahead would be challenging, but I now had resources, support, and most importantly, the unshakable conviction that protecting my son from harm was more important than maintaining a facade of family harmony. As I closed my journal that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, when thinking about my family peace. Not because the situation was resolved, but because I finally trusted myself to do what was right regardless of the pressure to conform to their expectations. 3 weeks after the incident, I had just put Ethan down for his afternoon nap when an aggressive knocking startled me. I opened the door to find Ashley standing there immaculately dressed in a designer outfit, her expression a mixture of annoyance and condescension. "We need to talk," she announced, attempting to push past me into the apartment. I blocked the doorway. "This isn't a good time. Ethan is napping." "This isn't about Ethan. It's about you spreading lies about me." Her voice rose sharply. "My reputation is on the line." I kept my voice deliberately calm and quiet. "I haven't spread any lies. Now please leave before you wake Ethan." Ashley's eyes narrowed. "You told doctors I abused your kid. You got some social worker involved. You're not answering mom and dad's calls. You missed the engagement announcement. You're tearing the family apart with your dramatics." "What happened wasn't a lie, Ashley. You deliberately sprayed perfume in Ethan's eyes. That's not something I'm willing to pretend didn't happen." Her face flushed with anger. "It was a joke, God. You've always been so uptight. And now you're threatening me with some kind of legal action. Mom told me you're talking to lawyers." I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, watching discreetly from her doorway, clearly concerned about the escalating confrontation. Remembering Daniel's advice about documentation, I reached for my phone in my pocket and subtly started recording. "Ashley, what you did caused Ethan to need emergency medical treatment. The doctors were legally required to report it. I'm not pressing charges, but I am establishing boundaries to protect my son." "Boundaries," she scoffed. "You mean cutting off the family that supported you through every failure? Where would you be without mom and dad's help after James left you, probably in some shelter?" I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. I appreciate the help they've provided, but it doesn't give anyone the right to hurt my child. I'm warning you, Cassandra, she hissed, jabbing a finger toward my face. If you don't stop this nonsense, I'll sue you for defamation. I have connections, important friends. I can make life very difficult for you. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. Philippe's family has connections in the hospital board. One word from them and your nursing career could hit some major obstacles. Is that what you want? I stood my ground even as my heart raced. What I want is for my son to be safe. What I want is for my sister to understand that deliberately causing a child pain isn't a joke. You know what your problem is. You've always been jealous of me. Always. And now you're using your kid to get attention and sympathy. It's pathetic. Her voice had risen again, and I heard Ethan stirring in his bedroom. You need to leave now, I said firmly. Or what, she challenged. Or I'll call the police and report you for harassment. Ashley laughed the sound, harsh and mocking. Go ahead. See who they believe, the successful executive or the struggling single mom with mental health issues. Mental health issues. That's what mom and dad have been telling everyone, that you've been unstable since the divorce, imagining slights against your precious little boy. Everyone's so concerned about you, Cassie. Her tone made the concern sound like an accusation. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I had been holding back, hoping for reconciliation, believing that somewhere beneath the cruelty was the sister I'd once loved. But her words revealed the truth. She saw nothing wrong with what she'd done. Worse, she and my parents were actively working to discredit me, rather than acknowledge the harm they'd caused. I think we're done here, I said quietly. We're done when I say we're done, Ashley snapped. You're going to call mom and dad today. You're going to apologize for missing the engagement announcement. You're going to stop this ridiculous drama about the perfume. And you're going to bring Ethan to the family portrait session next month. He needs to be there looking happy and normal. Do you understand? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not the confident, successful woman she projected to the world, but someone desperately clinging to control and appearance at the expense of basic humanity. What I understand, I said evenly, is that I've been recording this entire conversation. I understand that you've just admitted to knowing about the incident, minimized deliberate harm to a child, and threatened my career. I understand that you came to my home to intimidate me, rather than express any concern for your nephew's well-being. The color drained from Ashley's face. You can't record me without my permission. That's illegal. Actually, in this state, single-party consent is perfectly legal for recordings. Something Daniel explained to me. Who the hell is Daniel? My attorney. This wasn't entirely true. Daniel had offered advice but wasn't officially representing me. But Ashley didn't need to know that. You got a lawyer. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. I've also been gathering statements from other family members about your behavior. Cousin Megan had quite a lot to share about the flower girl dress incident at her brother's wedding. Ashley's expression hardened again. No one will believe any of this. You're nothing in this family. Just the disappointing daughter with the defective kid. Maybe so. But I have documentation, medical records, witness statements, and now this recording. What do you have Ashley mom and dad's protection? That only goes so far. You'll regret this, she warned, backing toward the elevator. When you're all alone with your weird kid, no family, no support, you'll regret crossing me. After she left, I leaned against the door, heart pounding, surprised by my own boldness. I checked the recording. It had captured everything clearly, including her threats and admission that she knew exactly what she had done to Ethan. That evening, I sent the recording to Daniel, who called me immediately after listening to it. This is significant, he said. She essentially admitted to the incident while simultaneously threatening you. Combined with the medical documentation and the statements you've been gathering, we have a strong case for a protective order if needed. Is that what you recommend? I think we should file a formal complaint with Child Protective Services first, he suggested. Your sister's behavior shows a pattern of deliberate harm toward Ethan, and now she's escalated to making threats against you. CPS needs to have this on record. The following day, with Daniel's guidance, I filed a formal complaint against Ashley, including the medical records from Ethan's emergency room. Visit my detailed account of the incident statements from Megan and 2 other family members who had witnessed concerning behavior from Ashley in the past and the recording of her threats. The response was swift. A CPS investigator named Brooke Matthews contacted me within 24 hours to schedule an interview. She was professional but compassionate as she took my statement and reviewed the evidence I had gathered. Based on what you've provided, we'll be conducting a thorough investigation, she explained. This will include interviewing other witnesses and family members. 3 days later, my parents called in rapid succession, their messages increasingly frantic. "What have you done?" my mother demanded. Some government worker called asking questions about Ashley. "This has gone too far, Cassandra." My father was more direct. "This needs to stop immediately. I've called Marcus Jenkins." Marcus was his attorney, a man known for aggressive tactics. "We can make this go away with the right donation, but you need to withdraw whatever complaint you've filed." I didn't return their calls. Instead, I focused on Ethan, whose nightmares about the incident had finally begun to subside, thanks to his sessions with Dr. Sampson. A week into the investigation, I received an unexpected email from Philippe Ashley's French boyfriend. The subject line read simply, "You should know." "I have ended my relationship with Ashley," he wrote. "What I witnessed at your parents' home was disturbing, but I told myself it was a family matter, not for me to judge. After learning of similar incidents in her past, I cannot in good conscience proceed with our engagement. I should have spoken up when she hurt your son. For that failure, I apologize." He went on to reveal that Ashley had been asked to take a leave of absence from her company, pending an investigation into her conduct. Apparently, one of her colleagues had a child who had been treated by me at the pediatric clinic, recognized Ashley's name from hospital gossip, and raised concerns with their HR department. The carefully constructed image my sister had maintained for so long was beginning to crack, revealing the reality beneath. As Daniel had explained, when behavior like this is finally exposed, it often turns out that others have seen red flags but were afraid to speak up. 2 weeks into the CPS investigation, the investigator confirmed what I had suspected. Ashley had a history of concerning behavior toward children that had been systematically minimized and hidden by my parents' influence. Money. A former nanny had quit after witnessing Ashley deliberately trip a younger cousin at a family gathering. A neighbor's child had been accidentally pushed downstairs during a playdate years ago. "Your parents are attempting to influence the investigation," Brooke informed me during a follow-up meeting. "They've made calls to my supervisor and offered to make a substantial donation to the department." "That sounds like them," I acknowledged, sadly. "Such attempts only strengthen our concern about the family dynamic," she assured me. "We take these cases very seriously, regardless of a family's social or financial status." By the end of the month, the protective order against Ashley was approved. She was legally prohibited from coming within 100 yards of Ethan or me, or contacting us directly. My parents, though not named in the order, were informed that any supervised contact with Ethan would need to be approved by me and potentially monitored by a professional. The consequences for Ashley extended beyond legal restrictions. Her company placed her on indefinite leave after their internal investigation. Several charity boards she had proudly served on quietly asked her to step down. The carefully cultivated social standing she had valued above all else was crumbling. I took no joy in this collapse. What I felt instead was a profound sadness for what might have been the loving family I had wanted for Ethan, the sister relationship I had craved throughout my life, alongside a steely determination to protect my son from further harm. As Dr. Bennett reminded me during one of our sessions, this isn't about revenge, it's about accountability and protection. Sometimes those require similar actions, but the intention makes all the difference. The CPS investigation concluded with a finding that supported my account of events and formally documented the pattern of concerning behavior. My parents were required to attend family therapy sessions if they wanted to have supervised visits with Ethan, a condition they initially rejected outright. "We've done nothing wrong," my mother insisted during a brief tense phone call. "This is all a dramatic overreaction to a simple misunderstanding." "Mom," I said quietly, "a simple misunderstanding doesn't send a child to the emergency room. It doesn't cause chemical burns to his eyes. It doesn't make him wake up screaming from nightmares." There was a long silence before she replied, "Your father and I need time to process all this. We'll be in touch." I didn't expect to hear from them again anytime soon. What surprised me was how much peace that thought brought. 6 months passed, marking half a year since the Sunday dinner that changed everything. Spring had turned to summer, and Ethan and I were picnicking in the park near our new apartment. Yes, new apartment, one of many changes we'd embraced. Ethan was running through the sprinklers with another boy he'd befriended, his laughter carrying across the grassy field. His eyes were completely healed, with no lasting physical damage, just as Dr. Patel had predicted. The emotional healing had taken longer, but was evident in his increasingly confident interactions with other children and his decreased anxiety in new situations. I watched him play from our picnic blanket where I sat with Jessica and Daniel. What had begun as professional advice from Daniel had gradually evolved into friendship, and then cautiously something more. He was different from any man I'd dated before, patient, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in both Ethan's well-being and mine. "He's doing so well," Jessica observed, watching her nephew as she called Ethan, though there was no official relation race through the water. "You both are." "We've had good help," I acknowledged, smiling at both of them. The support system we'd built over the past months had been crucial to our healing process. My promotion at work had been unexpected but welcome, a move to a leadership position in the pediatric department that came with better hours and increased pay. The financial stability meant I no longer had any dependence on my parents' occasional assistance, which had always come with strings attached. We had established new traditions and routines. Sunday dinners at my parents' mansion had been replaced by Sunday brunches, with our chosen family, Jessica and Daniel, friends from the single parents group, and occasionally Megan and her daughter when they visited from Chicago. These gatherings were relaxed and joyful, with no crystal glasses to worry about or rigid expectations of behavior. Ethan continued his sessions with Dr. Sampson, though they had reduced to twice monthly. As his progress steadied, he's developing healthy boundaries, she had noted in our last parent consultation. He's learning to trust his instincts about people and situations, which is exactly what we want to see. My own therapy with Dr. Bennett had been equally valuable, helping me recognize and begin to heal from patterns established long before Ethan was born. "Family dynamics are powerful," she had explained. "They shape how we see ourselves and the world, but they can be changed when we become aware of them." As for my family of origin, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. After 3 months of silence, my parents had reached out through a family therapist. They had begun seeing a step I never expected them to take. The therapist explained that they were beginning to recognize their role in enabling Ashley's behavior and wanted to work toward possible reconciliation. "It's a process," the therapist cautioned. "They're still struggling with many aspects of accountability, but they've taken the first step." We agreed to a carefully structured meeting in the therapist's office. It was awkward and emotionally charged, with moments of defensiveness from both my parents, but also glimpses of genuine regret, particularly from my father. "I failed you," he admitted at one point, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "I failed Ethan. I was so focused on maintaining a certain image that I lost sight of what really matters." My mother found it harder to acknowledge her role, still clinging to the belief that family problems should remain private. But she too had moments of clarity. "I always favored Ashley," she said during our second session. "I saw myself in her, the beauty, the social grace. I didn't know how to connect with you because you were so different from me. That's not an excuse. It's just, I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I did." We were far from a full reconciliation, but small steps were being taken. They had attended every scheduled therapy session and had recently asked if they could send Ethan a birthday gift, which I inspected carefully before giving to him. Ashley remained absent from our lives, the protective order still in place. According to my parents, she had moved to California after being asked to resign from her company. She had never acknowledged any wrongdoing or expressed any remorse for what happened to Ethan. The distance, both physical and emotional, was for the best. As the sun began to set over the park, casting long shadows across the grass, Ethan ran back to our picnic blanket, wet and happy. "Can Daniel come for story time tonight?" he asked, plopping down beside us. Daniel smiled. "If it's okay with your mom." I nodded, warmth spreading through me at the easy affection between them. Daniel had never tried to replace Ethan's father or push himself into our lives. Instead, he had simply been present, consistent, and kind, qualities I had once thought were too much to hope for. Later that evening, after Ethan was tucked into bed and Daniel had gone home, I sat on my balcony looking at the city lights. The past 6 months had been challenging in ways I never anticipated, but also transformative. I had discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed, and built a life that felt authentic rather than performative. The most profound lesson had been about the true meaning of family. For years, I had clung to the belief that blood connections trumped all else, that maintaining the appearance of family harmony was worth almost any personal cost. Now, I understood that true family is defined by love, respect, and safety, not DNA or obligation. By choosing my son's well-being over toxic relationships, I hadn't just protected him. I had modeled the kind of courage and self-respect I hoped he would carry into his own future relationships. I had broken a cycle that might otherwise have continued into the next generation. There was still healing to be done, boundaries to maintain, and new challenges to face. But sitting there in the quiet evening, I felt a peace I had rarely experienced in my adult life. The peace that comes from living authentically and protecting what truly matters, regardless of external pressures or expectations. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love? What helped you find the strength to set boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to support more content like this. Remember, true family is defined by love and respect, not obligation. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to protect what matters most in your life.